Well, good morning. This is the day we're going to be rebuilding the carburetor on this 1962 Johnson Seahorse 3 horsepower. Been working on this to get it ready to put on my 12-foot aluminum fishing boat. And so over here at my carb rebuilding station, I think sometimes people wonder, what does your workshop look like? As you can see, this is a Makita table saw that doubles as my carb rebuilding station. So you use, when you got small spaces, you make the areas do double duty. So if you want just a quick look at my workshop, this is my workbench. It's way too cluttered and crowded, so maybe an upcoming project will be kind of a reorganization of the workshop and how I organize my tools. Not too bad. I pretty much know where everything is, so it's not too much of a problem. But that's for another time. Let's get to work on building this. Now, some people wonder, where do you get your parts for especially old vintage outboards? And I have not found a better place than marineengine.com. And I know there's 3 or 4 places out there, and they may be part of a network of outboard engine parts. And but I've just had a lot of good success and great customer service from marineengine.com. I don't get paid to say this. This just been my experience with them. So I've got the carburetor parts here. All of the various and sundry little parts have come in. That black item back there is the new float, so it's a new material. They don't have the cork ones available, which I'm fine with. I'm thinking that new it's kind of a very light plastic material. It's not a hollow body float like some of the floats are. This is actually a solid core, lightweight plastic foam. So we'll see how that one performs. So let's get to rebuilding this carb. So I've got my carburetor pieces set out here. I've got the main body, I've got the float bowl, and I've got some new parts here. This is the new float. This is the new needle valve, along with it's got a gasket for the jet, and it's got a little retaining spring clip to hold the little needle valve to the arm of the float. Got my gasket for putting the bowl back on, and let's look at some of the parts that we've got here. This is a rubber gasket that goes right here over top of this jet, like so, and that part's done. Now let's work on the float. So the first thing I've got to do is take out this old jet. Carefully open up this package so we don't lose anything. Alright, looks good. Notice the new jets have a little bit wider slot now that fit the larger screwdriver. That's kind of nice because it's wider. Alright, got that seated just nice and snug. Now we got to work on setting up the needle valve with the retaining clip on to this. But this is basically going to sit right here. There's an upward and a down position on the arm of the float, so it wouldn't work this way. You want to set it this way. I saved the old pin from when I took the float out before, and I'm glad I did because they didn't send a new float pin. So always good to hang on to everything until your new parts come in. On these little retaining clips, there's kind of an upward and downward position on this as well. You want that little curl right there to be facing up, because that's what's going to go through the little hole on the left hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and first get my needle valve top. That into there. Just like that. Now we're going to take the float, make sure the arm is in that upward position, and we're just going to get that in just like so. That way it centers itself underneath the arm. Now let's go ahead and get this onto the carburetor. Get the needle to fall down into the jet, just like so, and let's get that pin in. Okay, let's go ahead and get this pin in place. Kind of get it lined up, wiggle it around till you feel it start going through the armature. Wiggle again, and then once you get that in place, that's good. Now this this float looks like it's in a really good position. It's slightly higher on this side when it's just at rest, turning this carburetor upside down. So that means you're going to get a good seal with that needle. See if you can see the needle back here. See that needle go up and down. And that's about right. If you needed to make adjustments in this float, on the back here you've got a little tab that can be bent. So I would spread that out a little bit more, and that would allow the float to seat a little bit more, but we're going to go with that. Now that we've got this kind of brown gasket on there, we've got our float back in place, let's go ahead and reassemble the bowl. And we'll just make sure we get our gasket going on in the right direction, just like so. Get our bowl in place. Make sure all the holes are lined up with the gasket holes. And now we'll put some screws back on. So there's 5 screws that go back in this carb, and all those screws are the same length. Earlier I'd cleaned them up with a wire brush. Just get them clean, get all the threads clean again. And again, with everything with more than one screw, just make sure everything gets seated snugly first and evenly before you start tightening them down, and then work your way around in a sequence for tightening them. You can tell, kind of get a little feedback from your hand and screwdriver. Get an idea for their snugness so that everything kind of starts clamping down with equal pressure. Just work your way around. And that's it. We've got the bowl back on. Now let's deal with these needle valves. This is the low speed idle adjustment needle valve. This is the high speed adjustment, and this is where I did that repair with JV Weld on this needle valve that saved me about $30. So what we've got to do, we've got to pull these out. We're going to pull these holding nuts off, and we've got to put a couple packing nuts in behind these holding nuts. That creates the seal against the fuel. And these we keep fairly loose. We're gonna wind them in just so they're snug, not tight, and then we're gonna back each one out about 1.5 turns, and then we'll put the handles on after we get this onto the outboard. And that'll be around that sweet spot where we'll have some room to play with the adjustments on the low speed and the high speed. So it's on the newer engines, they've taken and set this high-speed adjustment permanent, but on these older models you still have the ability to adjust the high-speed revs of your motor, and you know, the mix of the oil and the mix of the fuel and the air. So it's kind of opposite, because down low is your high speed, up high is your low speed adjustment. So it's just kind of opposite, that's all. So let's go ahead and get these packing nuts done now. Alright, so let's start with our high speed adjustment. Got a couple of my packing nuts here, and just kind of stack them together, drop them in. Use a screwdriver just to make sure they're sitting flat, and go ahead and get this retaining nut in. And we're just going to snug it up. We'll tighten it down a little bit more later. And get our needle valve in. Again, this is the low speed idle adjustment. Sits at the top. Now let's do the same thing on the bottom for the high speed needle. Get them 2 in there. Again, you know, one of the reasons that I love marineengine.com is they have great diagrams. Those parts diagrams really help you determine, okay, how many parts go in this area, especially when it comes to things like washers and seals. Alright, and get this just seated. Just hand tight on those nuts for now, and then we'll crank those down a little bit just to snug them up a little bit more with the wrench. Not too tight, but enough to get a decent seal on those. And what's happening with these packing nuts as you tighten these down is that it's compressing those against that needle, the sides and the threads of those needles, so it's kind of creating a compression fitting. Again, just tight enough. You kind of feel it. When it kind of feels like you shouldn't go anymore, don't go anymore.